All right then, who are the top 10 tens? We've reached the fly halves on the player power rankings, where I'm counting down the top 10 players in every position as I see it, as we close out the year with the Rugby World Cup still fresh in our minds and building on the lists that I did back in the summer, or my summer, a few months back. So then, I think there'll be lots to discuss on this one. So as ever, get stuck in down below. What do you make of this top 10, which starts with, at number 10, Marcus Smith? Will he get handed the reins to start for England now Owen Farrell has taken a step back? I wonder. There's a lot of people that are massive fans of Marcus Smith in England, and there's a lot of people basically since the last World Cup have been desperate for him to start. And there's a lot of people that would argue Marcus Smith's never been given a fair crack at fly half. And then you look and see that he's got 35 caps to his name. I think he's had plenty of opportunity, and up till now hasn't transferred that amazing club form to the international stage. Precociously talented, and for Harlequins he is incredible. At international level you get a little bit less time, defences are a little bit better, and he has never taken the game by the scruff of the neck. The context there is the England team has been poor during the last 4 years, and that's affected all of England's fly halves. They've got lots of problems in the team. 10 is not one of them. Who is going to be the 10 starting in the Six Nations? That's going to be a tight call. It could be Marcus Smith. 24 years young, he's got a lot of time and is a fine player. At number 9, Damien McKenzie. He looks like he is going to get given the job at fly half with New Zealand because Richie Mwanga has gone off to Japan. Almost 50 caps to his name. He's 28 years of age, coming into a prime age. He looks fantastic in Super Rugby at fly half. Again, like Marcus Smith, can he transfer that club form to international level? We're going to find out in the case of Damien McKenzie, you feel. Scott Robertson will put his faith in him. And I hope he shows what he's about, because he is just a wildly talented guy. And at the moment, on this list, number 9, despite the fact he's not played a lot of rugby at fly half, that's how good I think he is. At number 8, George Ford, someone that has played a lot of rugby at fly half at international level, closing in on 100 caps, 30 years of age. I think for what it's worth, he will be the guy that gets given the 10 jersey for England in the Six Nations over Marcus Smith. And I think you only have to look at his performance against Argentina in that opening World Cup game when England were down to 14 men to see why. He is just a fantastic player who would be starting at 10 for most international sides around the world, except for maybe 2 or 3. He would be getting the starting gig. And when you think about the players that have now retired from international rugby, like Johnny Sexton, Nicolas Sanchez, Dan Biggar, that only amplifies just how good England's stock of fly halves are. They need the rest of the team to step up to that kind of level. George Ford, wonderful rugby player. Number 7, Matthew Jalibert, one of the younger of the fly halves on this list. He's 25, brilliant for Bordeaux. And how do I say this? The biggest compliment you can pay to Matthew Jalibert is that France didn't miss Romain Ntamack until, that is, they really missed Romain Ntamack. What do I mean by that? Matthew Jalibert was outstanding in the Rugby World Cup pool stages. That game against New Zealand on the opening night, the try set up for Damien Penaud, brilliant individual skill. He was great through the pool stages, and then in the quarter-final against South Africa, he made some errors, and those errors were costly. It's only tiny margins at the highest level, and he wasn't quite where he needed to be, and they lost that quarter-final at home. I'm not blaming the defeat on Matthew Jalibert, but it definitely contributed, and it was on that night that France really rued not having Romain Ntamack in their team. So he's at number 7, which is where he was last time. Marnie Libok, meanwhile, is rocketing up the list. By the way, if you're still watching at this point, if you haven't already, hit subscribe on the channel. Give the video a thumbs up. It costs you nothing, but it really helps me spread the word to other rugby fans around the world. Marnie Libok. He is a guy that's limited on how high he can go up this list by his goal kicking. That's something that fly halves have to be able to do. I mean, I just talked about Matthew Jalibert. He's a good goal kicker, but the French 10s don't actually need to do a lot of goal kicking because Thomas Ramos is the goal kicker from 15. But in the case of South Africa, they need a goal kicker in their 10 jersey, and it's that cost Marnie Libok his place in the side for the biggest games when it mattered most. Although you have to say his attacking game is just incredible. That no-look kick pass against Scotland was one of the great moments of the World Cup. And at 26 years of age, Marnie Libok has got a lot of time to develop the areas of his game that he needs to. But what he does well, he does incredibly well. And for South Africa, they can pick different players depending on how they want to play, because they've got so much depth and so much talent in pretty much every position, including fly half. Into the top 5 then. Romain Ntamack wasn't there at the Rugby World Cup. I've kept him in the top 5. Drops down a spot. He is for club and country, Toulouse and France. Absolutely brilliant. And along with Marcus Smith, he's the youngest fly half on this list at 24 years of age. He's already got 37 caps to his name. He's won a Grand Slam. He's been the main man in the 10 jersey for France alongside his club teammate Antoine Dupont. They form a fantastic attacking partnership. And as I mentioned when I was talking about Matthew Jalabert, France really missed him when they missed him. And Romain Ntamack, I think, with that in mind, will be Fabien Galtier's go-to choice for the games ahead. We'll see on that one, but for me, he's still there at number 5. Finn Russell was my number 1 last time, but he's dropped down 3 places to number 4. Now, he is an incredible rugby player, and the things that Finn Russell can do, nobody else can. I prefer to celebrate players for what they can do rather than focus on what they can't do. But as I mentioned in the case of like Marnie Lebock, his goal kicking was a limiting factor. And for Finn Russell, maybe the reason why he's only got 1 British and Irish Lions test cap to his name, maybe the reason why he's at number 4 on this list now, but again, tell me if you disagree, is the fact that when the very biggest games come on, he doesn't quite boss it to the level that the real best quality fly halves in the world and in rugby history do. Look at that game against South Africa in the pool stages. South Africa's first game on that opening weekend in Marseille. I was there in Marseille. And yes, South Africa's pack were on top, and that's always going to make the job hard for a fly half. But the South African defence shut him down, and he had no answer to it. And then in that pool game against Ireland, they got absolutely panned, and Finn Russell was largely anonymous. And that's what I mean. Yes, the whole team contributes to that, but he's the main focal point of the team, and he did not have his best nights when it mattered the most for Scotland. I love him as a player, but that's why he's dropped down my list. And on those metrics, on that basis, it's the reason why Owen Farrell goes up to number 3. Because, and you know, there's a lot of reasons why people don't like Owen Farrell. You'll know if you watch this channel for any length of time, I love the guy. He's England's all-time record point scorer. I think he's a wonderful rugby player. I think the stick he cops is really unfair. And I think he's been used as kind of the scapegoat for Eddie Jones and Steve Borthwick and the style of play they play. You only have to look at how Saracens play and have played over recent years to see that Owen Farrell is not a boring fly half. He's got all the skills. But what he did, I mean, he played a world-class game. Comparing this with Finn Russell and what I discussed about having your big game on the biggest stages. The bigger the stage, the better this guy plays. He was incredible in that Rugby World Cup semi-final when England narrowly lost. An England team which aren't very good. And yet Owen Farrell grabbed that game by the scruff of the neck. That drop goal from halfway being a prime example. Tactically fantastic. And he almost dragged his side into a World Cup final. On that metric alone, forget the name, forget what you think about him as a bloke. On that metric alone, he deserves his spot in the top 3 for me. But again, tell me if you disagree. Get stuck in the comments. No question about the top 2. I mean, we could discuss the order of the top 2 because they're both amazing. Handré Pollard, he's just an Iceman. Ice in his veins. What a player. Faultless. 100% kicking record in the knockout stages. Again, talk about like world-class mentality as well as skill and execution. This guy has got it all going on. And at 29 years of age, he has got another World Cup in him, no question. And if he were to win a 3rd World Cup, surely he'd have to overtake Dan Carter as the greatest fly half in the history of the sport. Surely. I mean, South Africa don't win that World Cup. They just won without Handré Pollard. It's that simple. So, I mean, 69 caps to his name. He would have had more if it wasn't for some serious injuries he's dealt with. If he can stay fit and stay well, how many points, how many caps, and how many more tournaments can Handré Pollard win? I absolutely love this guy. He's just the perfect all-rounder. And an all-rounder is how I would also describe Richie Mwanga, who, yes, does incredible attacking things. His goal kicking, metronomic, so good. Mind you, missed a couple of kicks in the World Cup final. However, his overall game through the World Cup and over the last couple of years has been absolutely tip-top. New Zealand are going to miss him while he's in Japan. Is he going to come back? The reason he's still on this list, and I haven't classed him as having retired from international rugby like Johnny Sexton, like Nicolas Sanchez, for example, is because he's only in Japan for a while, but I think it's a 3-year deal he's signed. So he's going to drop out of this list in the lists I make in the months ahead because he's not going to play any more international rugby. But he could come back. He addressed that, and he was interviewed a couple of weeks ago, and he said that he could potentially see himself living his whole career out in Japan and not playing for the All Blacks again. I think that would be a crying shame. I mean, fair enough. Go and make as much money as you can. It's a short career and one injury can end it. So I don't begrudge any player going and making bank. But don't you want to look back in years to come and be able to tell your grandkids that you won a World Cup, show them the medal and that sort of thing. And Richie Mwanga, he's only 29. He's got another opportunity to win a Rugby World Cup. Same age as Andre Pollard. So I hope we see the pair of them at the next World Cup in Australia. We will see about that. As for the top 10 list, there it is overall. Your thoughts, please, in the comments below. And to remind you, the players that have dropped out of this list due to retirement: Johnny Sexton, Nicolas Sanchez, Dan Biggar. Gareth Anscombe might have been in the mix if he could have stayed fit. 2 players that drop out of the top 10, Santiago Carreras and Paolo Garbisi, because they just haven't been playing well enough. There is the top 10. Into the centres on the next video. I've also got Champions Cup coverage to bring you on the channel. So if you haven't already, please hit subscribe, and I will see you on the next video. Give the video a thumbs up and all that. Yeah, nice one.